see, 22. Okay. We'll just start in a minute or two. But yeah, how have you been otherwise? You liking the new house? Why don't you tell us about
Yes.
how you
So, the finding, I guess the tenant screening process was actually like a completely different ball game. I just first was like the finding the property and financing it and all that stuff. And I thought like, oh gosh, this must be like the hard part. But I think after it all was done, probably finding the tenant was the most difficult part for us because we just didn't know what to do, like in terms of vetting tenants or pre-screening them before showing them the house. And so we showed people, like a lot of people, the house, and then we're like, gosh, this is such a waste of time.
yeah.
Like a lot of these people aren't even qualified. And so then fortunately I spoke to a few SARE members and they gave me a lot of great tips, and then yeah, so helpful. And so it took about 3 weeks, but we finally found a really great tenant. And honestly, I haven't even thought about the house at all since we rented it out. So we
Oh,
haven't had to do anything really. And it's really, yeah, like literally just like money coming in every month.
oh, we love to hear that. Money.
Yeah. So, and so when I wanted to invest in real estate, I didn't really know what sort of strategy I wanted to go with. But I think this definitely reinforces that maybe long-term rentals is a really good fit for me because basically once you find a tenant, it's essentially hands off. Like if you get a really good tenant.
Yep.
And so we had signed him on for only 6 months, and he was looking for a home because him and his girlfriend broke up. And so he said he didn't know like if it was going to be a long-term rental or not, but then he actually contacted us again and asked if he could extend to a year. So that was like great. But we told him that we're not doing a year-long leases right now, so we just do another 6 month and acknowledge like the same rate that he's getting. But yeah, other than that, everything has been great, and he doesn't bug us. And we've been to the house probably once since February,
Yeah.
and it looks great.
Okay. Yeah. That's honestly awesome. Yeah, especially if you get if you do the 6 month thing, push them for until I guess June or like summertime, so that way you can do like that yearly lease and it renews.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so that's probably going to be what we try to push for
All right.
after
Well,
this first 6 months is over.
yeah, that's honestly great. Okay, let me give a quick intro then. Yeah, I wanted to welcome Susan Han. She was in the inaugural class for the 30-day challenge when Annie was telling everyone, all right, we got this idea for wacky, wavy idea, which is people who've never bought their first home. What if we could push them to get something under contract in 30 days and ready to go? And Susan was one of the first to do it. She bought her home in North Carolina, the first investment property she's ever bought. And she was also an entrepreneur as a ghostwriter, content creator for fashion influencers and boutique brands, which means that financing would have been was probably a bit of a hurdle for you to overcome initially. And we kind of want to talk a bit more about her freelancing. But originally, she was in corporate for 5 years in finance, supply chain, retail, and she wanted to do real estate for so long, but didn't really do it until Sarah came along, and we kind of pushed her over the edge to tell her to do it. But obviously, most of it was on her own. It was just like it's nice sometimes to have people in the background who have done it before, and just to be like, oh, you're going in the right direction, or that's not necessarily there. But Susan had gotten herself pretty far along the way. It was just kind of that analysis paralysis, right? Where you're just a few steps away from really buying your first property. Either way, digital content, real estate. Other than that, Susan loves to travel, cook, and visiting cafes. And without further ado, why don't you tell us a little more about your origin story, how you got to wanting to buy your real estate?
So I think like most people in the group, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, wow, like if I really want to build wealth, it seems like real estate is really like the way to go. And of course, this was back in 2018 when I had just I was like maybe 6 months into freelancing. And so like I had a lot of things going on, and like I was Googling how to get started in real estate, how to buy your first investment property. So much information out there, and it was just hard to like filter through all the noise. I think now when you Google it, the resources are a lot better. But even just, back in 2018, you just don't really know like what's good and what's not. So I didn't pursue it further after researching. I was just like, gosh, I don't know where. I wish I knew someone that could just like talk to me about this. And then of course COVID hit last year, and it ended up being kind of a blessing in disguise, right? So my business drops like 50%, but then I had so much time, and then I was just watching real estate gurus on YouTube, and I came across Elisa, and then Elisa invited me to share. And when you guys had invited everyone who wanted to do the 30 days to buy a home challenge, I was also about to have a baby, so I didn't even think that this was like a great idea, right? I was just like, I'll just try it. If they tell me no, then like whatever, but if they say yes, then it gives me a reason to really bite the bullet and really go for it, especially since you guys were willing to do the virtual walkthroughs. It just made everything there was really a lot of security in that for me, I guess, is to have someone who was more experienced say like, this is a good buy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we think is also crazy walking, properties when you're 8 months along. Just that for us, we were like, killing it, Susan. Yeah, for everyone that doesn't really know, we have like a little chat. We've been trying to help people in the 30-day challenge, where when they pick a home and they try to buy it, we'll follow along on their walkthroughs and just point out different things that they should probably pay attention to, and then help estimate the rehab budget as much as we can. And that was kind of something that I guess is helpful when the first time along. I remember that was my worry. I was lucky my agent, he's like a contractor. He does his own construction. And without his like knowledge, I would have been a lot more scared about even trying in the first place. So no,
yeah. So I actually think that having an agent who is an investor is so helpful, because so my agent is Joe Wynn, and so he's in the Charlotte area, and he flips, he does rentals, he does commercial, and his estimates are basically spot on with what Nelson was telling me. And Nelson, you were basically giving me estimates based on your experience in Texas, which I think ended up being like exactly the same, and so then that gave me even more security to be like, oh, I have like two people who really know what they're talking about. And then it was funny because after we did that first virtual walkthrough, you're like, oh, this kind of looks funky, so make sure you like check on that. Any like other house that I was going to, I was like, oh, so this is definitely funky, like this bathroom, like they just like piecemeal together.
All right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So along the way now, you have the house and you got a dope tenant. Is number two coming along? What's your plans in the future with
Yeah, so I had gotten really busy work wise, so it ended up being like really crazy trying to find a tenant and work. But I'm actually I have like a couple contracts that are ending this May, and I think I'm not gonna, the client probably wants to continue them, but I'm probably gonna cancel them so that I can focus more on real estate again, since that is really like the long-term goal here. So I haven't started looking for a second property yet, but it's funny that I was telling my husband, I've never like driven for dollars, but every day now I can't help that when I'm driving, I'm constantly looking at houses. I'm like, I could probably get this house if I could just work up the courage to call the owner. And so over the weekend, I had my husband drive down the street with me, and I'm like, you see these two houses? I think we can get them. And then sure enough, like I've been looking at these houses for the past 4 months, and the for sale sign goes up on one of them. So yeah, but that aside, I also might be having like a really great opportunity come up someone that I actually met in the SARE group invest in North Carolina, and he has a flip that he might be working on, and I might be helping him manage it for a small fee, but also to learn the process. So the group is just filled with so many great resources, and it's really like a good place to connect any other investors and to learn. So I really encourage everyone to just reach out and talk to people. And this guy actually, he left a it was on a thread. I saw him comment on someone's thread that he was like in Charlotte. And so I ended up messaging him last summer, and then we sort of stayed in touch since. And then now he's like, oh, would you be interested in this? And I'm like, oh, like, hell yeah, So that's something that might be happening soon, and that I'm really excited about.
It's cool. Plug the group. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've also had a lot of conversations with members. It's interesting, like when you start reaching out to people who are like involved, it's really, you'd be surprised what comes back to you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And even like months down the road, like you just never know what kind of opportunities can come up. So yeah, like keep reaching out, people.
And especially since like I know Annie's also had, dozens of chats with random strangers across the country. I think part of it is like I really do like giving back. It's a nice thing about real estate is I keep saying it's like a team sport because it's very difficult to do it on your own. So when you kind of give back, I feel like sometimes it comes to you, whatever you give out to the community. But no, I totally get it. This is just a plug to reach out to random strangers you haven't talked to yet in the group. But so aside from this, okay, so that's kind of your future goals. But do you have like an overarching plan? And like, I know you said you're gonna push off the contract stuff, but I figured, North Carolina is really booming, and like, are you trying to stay in the area? Like, what's next?
Yeah, so I'm definitely trying to stay in North Carolina. And because I still believe that there is so much growth potential in Charlotte, ideally I would love to like find another property here. So my current rental is actually only 5 minutes from my house. And I think I'm in an area that is not insanely like overpriced yet. So I think that the goal is to really have another property in Charlotte before the end of the year. And I really want that to be like a burr. But I'm not really sure like how that's like gonna work out. But I think I'm gonna go look at that house that I was just telling you guys about. And that one's also like 5 minutes down the street from my house. So it's easy that it's so close to home because when small things need to be done, my husband can just run out. And we like with the newborn, it just makes everything so much easier. So yeah, I think if anything though, I really want to have one more house before the year ends.
So then for driving for dollars, do you remember how to, I guess, pull information from random strangers off the?
Yeah, so I do. I'm just scared to make the call. Like when people call us, because we get calls all the time, people trying to buy our house, and my husband always gets mad and then he like yells at them, and I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna get yelled at if I call someone and ask them to buy this house? So and I think that even then, I don't really know how to carry that conversation. So that's probably something that I should probably look into more if I'm really serious about trying to find properties off the MLS.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've been sourcing a lot of lists and just like getting their information, and I've been pawning it off to agents to help me do the cold calling.
Oh, really?
I found another way, which is actually more efficient. My friend Abe started doing this in Reno, and he's like closed on quite a few units by doing it. But texting is actually really good way to get people's attention. So when you send a text, it gives them time to respond or not respond. And my texts are always like, "Hey, I'm not an agent. I'm actually just an investor trying to buy your house." And they're actually more receptive to that than agents trying to like list their homes for them. So if you call
Oh, interesting.
if you just send them a text like, hey, I'm Susan, I'm actually in your neighborhood, and I saw your house and I was interested in buying it. I'm not an agent, I'm just here to, as an investor. Let me know if you'd be interested in talking. If not, I can just, leave, just so they know you're not like automated and that you're a person that's down the street,
Oh, okay. I might have to try that. Yeah, texting I can definitely do. I just thought like, oh, I might have to call these people. It's just so scary.
I mean, my friend Abe is also like a programmer. He like quit his job at Amazon to start wholesaling during the pandemic.
Oh,
So
wow.
he like programmed it to text a bunch of people like automatically instead of, manually doing one at a time. But
Gosh, you programmers really have an edge. I'm like really gone to like the wrong business here.
yeah, I've got an insane number of lists that I will never be able to call through right now. That's like the hard part. I'm still setting up the text system for the cities I'm trying to target, but yeah, there's more
Oh,
than one way to
well, if
access.
you want to pass along Charlotte, I'm happy to. I'm
Yeah,
happy to
I mean,
receive that.
yeah, maybe we'll all come in and buy a little apartment complex together, right?
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's kind of funny. Someone back when you guys were trying to like do that crazy Texas thing, and all these people were willing to pull money together, and someone said that the level of trust in this group is insane. And that's exactly what I thought, when the Sarah member had asked if I'd be interested in managing. I was like, wow, the level of trust is really insane. Like I've never met this person, but like yeah, I'd love to do it, but I'm glad he's like willing to trust me.
And Nelson, do you want to do a recap for our new members in here? What's this Texas crazy thing that we tried to do?
Oh, we were looking at a 22 unit, like it was 11 duplexes in Austin that someone was trying to wholesale. And then we try to figure out, all right, who would be interested in coming together and trying to take down the whole deal. And then about $3 million worth of people were just like, we're in, let's do it. Let's go buy it. We lost out to the wholesaler themselves because they were trying to, the actual price of it was probably like 3.7 million for the whole thing. And then the wholesalers themselves are trying to sell for 4.3. And the wholesalers were, if they didn't get their price, they were just going to buy it themselves. So at that point, it wasn't worth competing against, but yeah, that's the fun story.
And
So
how long did it take us to get this money?
it's
Or
24 hours, like within the day. So it was really interesting. But yeah, so I mean, maybe North Carolina is a good market. So if we maybe find a little apartment complex, a couple of us can go in on it.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested. So if you find anything, I'd love to know.
All right. Thanks for kind of giving us the intro. I really appreciate it. And let's start taking questions if that works, unless you have something to jump in
Yeah,
on.
no, that works.
Okay. So Clement Chow asked, he'd love to learn a little more about your process for finding, vetting your tenant. Did you use Craigslist, word of mouth? What was kind of the best thing that helped? And then what tips did you get from those SARE members that really helped you out in terms of giving your time back?
Yeah, okay. So what was really helpful? So I did use Craigslist, but we found our tenant on Zillow. So we listed on everything that you guys had recommended. So Zumper, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, apartments. I tried to list on apartment.com, but there was like some sort of a weird issue going on with them. So I ended up like going through Zillow, and it worked out really well. What worked was having a pre-screening before even showing them the house to make sure that they meet like the minimum requirements. So like I would ask credit score, for income, why they were moving from their last place, and just a couple questions. I guess I can share that later if anyone's interested in that pre-screening list. But it was basically just a Google form. And so anyone that messaged me and said, I'm interested in your property, we sent them the Google form. Whoever filled it out, if they met, then we called them. If they didn't, then we didn't even bother talking to them. And then we showed them the house. And some of the helpful tips were like, if it's a sob story, like don't don't buy into it. Don't even like forget it. Also, calling the actual employer versus calling whoever that they list as their yeah, so that's helpful.
Yeah,
Sorry, my thing
I
fell
always,
out.
yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'll follow up on that. Whenever I get a record information, I don't actually get the phone number that they put down. I try to call the company. I Google search for the company, and then I call the company and I try to like route it to whoever's in HR and then ask them, hey, is this person working here as blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah, so I did that, and then it was funny. Like our tenant, he is the HR. So when we called, it like went to his voicemail. And I was like, oh, okay, well we don't need to worry about that because it's definitely him. Um, and so yeah, I think those were probably like the most helpful. And then anyone who wanted to like, who was really pushy was like a red flag. Anyone who was like, I can move in tomorrow, like I can put in the deposit now. Those were like all red flags, and so that was very helpful. But I think the pre-screening was probably the most helpful, and just trying to only show the property like one person at a time instead of like multiple people at once, because we ran into a situation where like I think two people were like applying at the same time, and then we didn't know what to do because both were qualified. And so it was helpful to just do it slowly and do it at, one person at a time.
Yeah, and this is also weird and crazy, but also how I actually got my first tenant. That was really great. I put in like a door code, and when the tenant came to do the walkthrough, I actually wasn't there for the walkthrough. I let them do it themselves. I asked them to take a photo of their ID and them in front of the building, and then I would send them what the actual temporary code was because it's one of those smart locks. So then they don't feel the pressure of me watching behind them while they walk through the house. And that's what
Oh,
I've learned from agents and like people who do sales is you don't want to follow behind them while they're looking at the house. So that's actually worked out really well for me, and I don't have to be on site anymore for showings. So that's probably one of the biggest things for me that I really like. You know, if you guys want to take it, it's yours. But like that saved me a lot of time, and like it got me my first tenant, who's been great. You know.
oh, and then I guess speaking of that, another helpful thing was to call them and make sure they were actually going to show up. We had a few no shows, and that ended up being really annoying. It was fine because the house was only like 5 minutes away, but like imagine if it was like 20 minutes away, then that would be even more annoying. So we just either call or text and be like, hey, just want to make sure you're going to be there. And if they didn't respond, then we didn't even bother going.
We didn't go over this earlier, but could you explain why Charlotte is so hot as a market, as a local source of knowledge?
So I think Charlotte is hot because, I mean, one, it's obviously like really, really affordable compared to other like major metropolitans. And it's sort of been under the radar like all these years, but there are a lot of good universities like in North Carolina in general. So we have like Duke, we have Chapel Hill, and yeah, like I know that's like in Raleigh, but a lot of people end up wanting to come to Charlotte. So also like Charlotte is, I believe, like number 2 in finance. So it's very easy for people from New York who work in finance to come down here and still keep their jobs and also have like more affordable housing. Um, I mean, I think the affordable housing and the weather is just probably the most appealing. And then also there's just a lot of like good industries here. I know it's also up and coming for like tech. There's like a lot more tech jobs coming here. A lot of companies are also coming here and opening up offices. And so that's just bringing in a lot more jobs.
Yeah, we talked to Jason Shao about this the other day, but a while back, he also was saying for the same reasons, essentially this Duke, North Carolina triangle, it's got the college town vibe that Austin had for a while. And, you know, all you need is like one major employer to pretty much change things up. And then all of a sudden you have Tesla number 2, right?
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, like Raleigh and Durham, I think is much more expensive than Charlotte, and it has been that way for a while. So I lived in Charlotte basically all my life since like 96. And like the market, like housing up there has always been like more expensive. And I think even now it's probably still more expensive than Charlotte. So, you know, when a lot of students end up graduating up there, a lot of them want to move to Charlotte. It's just, I think more of like a younger, like hipster type city. So it's very desirable for new college grads.
Got it. And then how did you approach the acquisition phase? For example, how many agents you work with, how many deals did you underwrite? Do you know how many offers you had to give out before you settled on this house that you purchased?
So I only worked with one agent, and I probably looked at, I actually still have everything that I went through. So it was probably like 15 houses, 15 deals that I went through, and we put in I believe 4 offers before I had one that was accepted. So we did get an accepted offer within that 30-day time frame. But like every single week, I was going to look at probably 3 or 4 homes.
And in terms of the market for the houses that you're seeing, what was kind of like the price range around your area? And is it a buyer's market or seller's market?
It's definitely a seller's market. I mean, so in Charlotte right now, anything that's under like the $200,000 price point is like going really fast. And I knew that I wanted something under that $200,000 price point. So the house that I bought ended up being like 163,000. And so that's basically how I decided on like this house, right? Like it had to be at least 3 bedrooms. It had to be under 200,000. And let me see, what was the other question? So I think it was Alex that kind of talked me into going with like the smaller house. I had asked, there were options for like a bigger house with a little bit more rooms. And then, you know, Annie, you and Alex were talking about rent to price ratio. And it's always better to have like 2 smaller homes versus like 1 big one, because then you're a little bit more diversified there. And that's why I ended up going with a smaller house, because I know that I wanted to buy another one this year. And just having that smaller one that cost a little bit less would put me in a better position to acquire another one.
No, no, those are good points. And then there's a reason why you went single family first instead of multifamily.
I think it's probably just because it was more familiar. So there's not a lot of duplexes in Charlotte. It's not like in California where they're sort of everywhere. So because I was born in California and we used to live in a duplex, so I just know that they were like everywhere. But here they're quite far and few in between. And I don't think I was like in a place that, you know, could afford like an apartment complex. So single family just made the most sense for me, for basically my budget. And I guess what I felt comfortable with is just what I knew. And so that's what I wanted to start with.
And then so we have a question from Young Park. Wanted to know a little bit more about what do the numbers look like for the property that you purchase, or even maybe your rental area, in terms of like the rent versus your purchase price.
So the house again was 163,000. We're renting it out for $1,250 per month. The cash on cash ROI ended up being about 10%. And after like I put money away for vacancy and CapEx and all of that, I'm cash flowing $300 a month. So it ended up being like a really, really great deal. And I was really upset when I had probably 3 rejected offers, but and this house ended up not even being my first choice, but it ended up being the one that we got. So it worked out like really well, and I'm really happy that it worked out the way that it did.
Yeah, I remember you said you negotiated some credits too for it, so it ended up being cheaper than you thought.
Yeah, so we offered 170, and it was accepted at 170, and then there were a few, so like a few things. The house didn't appraise, and then there were a few things that were small things that need to be fixed. And so the seller was like pretty generous, because I guess in the seller's market they could have just said, forget it, we're going to go with someone else's offer, because they did tell us they had like 2 backup offers. But they ended up doing some of the repairs, and then they dropped the price to 163, and then even like wrote us a check like on the closing day for some other like small issues that we found.
And something that really impressed me with Susan is that while we were doing the 30-day challenge, she pretty much barely just had that contract in hand, or she was already searching for her stuff, but she was already thinking about property number 2. So that was something I was like, oh my God, we hit like a home run. So I want you to walk us through a little bit about that planning stage, about expansion, especially in terms of financing. How did you get the funds for the down payment for the first one while you're already planning the second one? And you mentioned that you're doing like a contract position that's kind of like different from I guess what we do for W-2 employees. So how did that affect you in the loan process?
So I'm basically a full-time freelancer, and I have a couple clients. I just like converted to S Corp. So now I'm on payroll, and hopefully that will make the financing a little bit easier. But before that, I was basically just like a 1099 like employee for a few different people. And that made financing really difficult. But in any case, I'd already spoke to my dad. He knew that I wanted to buy rentals, and I told him that I have the income, I can prove it, but the banks don't like it. And so he was willing to co-sign, but fortunately, he didn't have to. And I don't really know like how the financing end worked. It just worked that I was able to get it on, I think on paper, my salary was probably like 30,000. So that's probably the other part of like the home price that I wanted to be in, right? Like I knew that if it was over 200,000, there's no way I could get financing for it. So I needed to stay under a certain threshold. And then in terms of like how I had the money to fund the properties, I mean, it's basically just been like savings of like, I think that in freelancing, there's a lot more money to be made. So it's easier to make more than, what you'd make in like a W-2 unless you're working in tech like Nelson, right? So that was all just like savings, and then we financed the rest. So we did 25% down, and then the rest was financed. And I guess like in terms of thinking about my second property already, at this point I feel like I don't have enough time. Like is in my mind. I'm thinking like, oh gosh, I don't have enough time. Like you look at Nelson, he's so young and he has how many properties? And then here I am like, oh geez, I'm in my 30s and I have one. Okay, like I need to hurry up. I'm playing catch up.
Not a rush. I'm also fun employed technically, so I went full time. A few months ago. So that's kind of why I've been able to really buckle down on it. It's really, once you start really trying to get bigger, it does take away a lot of your attention. And Annie's been crushing it for way longer than both of us. So let's be real here. She's the one with multiple properties in the Bay. So she's the one who's, even though you can have 20 units in Chicago here, that's probably like worth 2 homes that Annie's bought,
Oh, that's
Annie,
yes.
yeah, that's
I'm
true.
I'm not the one with the 18 unit in Chicago, dude. I think that's someone else, man.
Just gassing each other up. Okay, Yvonne asked, what kind of renters are you looking to target in your area? Like new graduates or white collar? How did you figure out who you wanted to target as your renters, I guess, is probably the best question.
So I was open to families. I was open to singles. My agent did say to me that, it's better to have multiple, when multiple people are working. So that's why the idea of a family maybe seemed more appealing to me, that, you know, it could be like a husband and a wife and maybe they have 1 or 2 kids. Um, so I was open to renting to students if I was buying in, there's like an area we call the university area, because it's where like the big university here is. That originally I had wanted to buy a home in the university area so that I could rent by the room to students. And that was one thing that you suggested, Nelson. But those properties that I put an offer on, I did not get. And so then I ended up, you know, just like to stop focusing on like just one area, because inventory is so like scarce. And so then I just started looking at general like price points that I was in, and, you know, the size of the home. And so our tenant is just like a single white collar, you know, worker. But I think that in Charlotte, you're going to get a mix depending on the area that you're in. So in the area that I'm in, I was expecting more like blue collar workers. But, you know, I think maybe it could be that I just got lucky there with the tenant that I got. But I think it's going to depend on the area that you're in. So there's like, you know, a very popular, like the more popular areas near downtown, you're going to find a lot of singles and a lot of college graduates and white collar workers who want to be like near center of the city. That's not where I'm at. So I don't expect to see that kind of tenants coming to my home.
Okay. On that subject too. So what areas, like Charlotte's pretty big, you know, northwest, south of downtown. What do you, you know, are there any areas you would recommend for people now looking? It sounds like in the chat, where would you point them towards? You know, any tips?
So if you can find anything that is near the airport going towards like downtown, I mean, that's like great. But for me, those areas are way too gentrified already. Like they're so expensive. But if you can find something, then like, you know, like go for it. We also have like the Plaza Midwood area that's sort of like east toward downtown. And that was an area that I was like really trying to find a home in. But I lost 2 offers there too. So as you can see, it's also very competitive. I ended up buying near like the Whitewater Center. It's not that close to downtown compared to those other areas, but I think there's still a lot of potential there. So yeah, I would say like east and southwest of like Center City. If you can find anything in those 2 spots, that's like really amazing.
Cool. And the next question in the room from Clement is that, are there, since that was your first time purchasing an investment property, if you could look back on it and do this over again, what would be something that you would have done differently?
Probably learn more about the tenant screening process first. I think I was so like bogged down on the numbers and trying to find the right deal that I just thought that finding a tenant would be a walk in the park, but that ended up probably being the most time consuming and stressful part of like all of this. And that could have just been because we like had just brought a baby home too, but I think that was probably the most like difficult trying to just like manage all the applicants and people who are interested that were calling. So it's definitely, you know, like I said at the beginning, it's completely different ballgame than finding a house. So you have like the part of finding the house, and then there's the part of like finding the tenant. And so maybe do a little bit more homework on screening tenants and reading more books on how to be a landlord. Otherwise, I think that, so Nelson, I think I mentioned this to you, but you had done, it was like how you like analyze like a multi-family deal or apartment complexes or something. And you had showed us the screen on city data where you can tell like what areas have been gentrified over like the past 10 years. like, I wish that I had known about that earlier, because that reinforced the areas that I wanted to invest in.
Mm,
So because I live here, so I'm a little bit biased towards like certain areas. I might just be like, oh, I really don't like this area. It's just like straight up ghetto, But when you showed the map in that Zoom call, and I went back to look at it, it like gave me the confidence that like, oh, actually, I had my areas like really spot on. So I think maybe knowing more of that from the beginning would have been helpful, because I think there were some homes that I missed out on.
yeah, let me show you what she's talking about. So this is a website called citydata.us. It's a pretty quick way to, tell what things have changed. There's two ways to measure, whether things were gentrified or not, but you can click here and select median house or condo value since 2000. Then you have either the most recent values. So this tells you who the richest people are. And it just like, this is downtown Charlotte. And then it's like, the southern part is where the richest people are. But then if you click this tab here that says percent change since 2000, you can see like, the areas around the rich people, probably they started, being priced out of that area and then had to expand out of it. Same thing happens here if you click household income. If you look at the percent change since 2000, it looks like the path of growth has been moving towards the south. And then, between that airport and the downtown area, like, Susan was saying. So this is a quick way to sort of gauge how much things have developed in, the last, since 2000. And, real estate trends tend to be like 10-year long cycles. So if things have grown that much since 2000, that's usually a pretty good indication that it'll keep sort of going down that path, and, people will keep having incomes increase, and then properties will keep going up as well. So that's what Susan's referring to. And then, okay, so then after that, I think that's it for our questions then.
We still have a couple up here. There's one from Renee who's over in San Francisco. So yay, more Bay Area folks over here. She's looking to invest out of state and wants to know what's a good way of getting started. And I think you guys are talking about looking for driving $4, about how did you get the contacts of the owner's information to buy these off-market properties?
So I just Googled it, but Nelson, in the when he was doing the 4 cram classes, he talks about it a little bit in there. I think it was the first one. I think it was the first one. But if you go through Nelson's like that video, Nelson sort of talks about how to find it. So that's like probably the best way to start.
Right, and for those who are not familiar with this, is that because I see a lot of new names in the room, if you go to YouTube and look up Subtle Asian Real Estate, which is our YouTube channel, back in December, we did like a newbies class starting in December for a couple lessons where we just kind of went straight through like what does it take to get started in out-of-state real investing. And then I would probably encourage those, especially Renee, to take a look at David Green's book on the long distance in real estate investing. So that's a really good start. And that book also inspired a lot of us in the group to start investing out of state. So
Yeah.
check that book out.
And the other option too is to go into our chats and look up the chat we had with David Green. He also did a webinar with us at the beginning of SARE. So he also talked a bit about that too.
You know what, that reminds me of something. Isn't that like our 1-year anniversary coming up?
Yeah, we've had our 1-year anniversary. We started in like last, March or something. So it's been like a little over a month since Sarah's birthday, Yeah. Yeah.
Just suddenly hit me.
Yeah, Penny's on point. Susan's also correct. We do have that class, but the long story short of it is every single county will have this thing called the tax assessor or tax recorder. And usually that's public information. So you can actually Google, say in Chicago, I'm in Cook County. So I type in Cook County tax assessor, and then I would be able to pull up the property information of where I live. And then on top of that, they also give the information to my name, my contact information, and did I pay my property taxes this year? You should actually check this too if you ever buy a property, because it's a good way to tell if the person you're buying the home from is behind on their property taxes, right? Obviously, hopefully, like your lawyer will find that for you in the purchasing process and make them pay off the liens that they owe. But part of it is like someone who's behind on property taxes is probably much more willing to give a discount to get rid of it, right? So.
Right, and I would probably say that right now, if Renee is like a new investor for out of state, I don't think I would recommend her going straight off and doing like only looking for off-market properties by looking up the owner's information. You should take some time to learn what the market is like and find a really good investor person that does real estate, like a real estate agent that's really focused on investment properties to get started before you try to do all this on your own, because you're not going to be able to do this off your own, especially when you're buying like a house that's 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, real estate's a team. You can do the cram classes and read all you want. It'll get you 80% of the way there. You really need that last 20% of other professionals kind of helping you carry the way. But that's kind of what the whole process is. When you get and you buy a house, you put in an offer, you have 30 days, right? That the whole system is put there to protect people who are buying homes, for the first time. And then eventually, once you're more comfortable, you can just do it on your own and save some money, and all your mistakes are your own at that point. But there's a reason why agents exist and professional investigators exist. They are there to help you find issues, right? So, and hopefully, that's something Susan encountered too.
Right. Next
For
question is
sure.
from Yunju. Is she wants to know, you mentioned that you switched from an LLC into an S corp, and so she
Yes.
wants to know what was your reasoning behind doing that?
According to my accountant, I would pay less taxes. So I just listened to my accountant. And also because I knew that if we wanted to buy more real estate, my husband and I are both like freelancers, and there's like no way we'd be able to do it without having to look like we're on payroll. So that was why we did it.
Yeah, I can explain this a little better. So from what my understanding is that there is a W-2, which is what lenders love because that shows you have stable income. When you open up an LLC, you can actually have an LLC that's an S corp too, or you can just go straight to S corp. Now, when you open the S corp, the idea is that it's a company that pays you money, but now you can write off a lot of your expenses because now you're your own company, right? As your S corp. With the LLC, you could do the same thing with real estate, but with a lot of lenders, they don't necessarily like to lend to LLCs, right? They want you to guarantee things, have it in your own name, and they want you to they want a neck to choke when they don't get their money, basically. If you have an LLC, you could just say, oh, LLC's bankrupt, bye, I'm gone, right? So that's why when you buy like personal property, you can have an S corp. You could actually also do this under an LLC. An LLC is a legal structure. It's not a tax structure. So you could actually set up an LLC as an S corp or a C corp, and then hire yourself as your own employee. And when you have that W-2, that's what lenders will look at. So that's, I think, what Susan was getting to is.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Lenders want to see a stable income, basically, and that's kind of that's the workaround to do it while saving the most amount of taxes, because now you have write-offs from your income that you don't have to pay taxes on.
Yeah, so hopefully, like this house, we put it in my name only, but hopefully I can have another one in my name, and then my husband can also have some in his name. So then we can get more properties.
The limit is 10 per person. So yeah, if you're a married couple, you can have like 20 together pretty much. So
I didn't know that. So
The next question is from someone who wants to remain anonymous. Ooh, very secretive. This person wants to know, did you look at the Fort Mill, South Carolina area, which is just across the border?
So Fort Mill to me is like nice area. And so I didn't want to be, I really took Nelson's advice of trying to stay in like low B, C neighborhoods. I didn't want to be in like high BA. And I think Fort Mill leans on like high BA. I mean, they're considered to have some of the best like school districts in this area. So I didn't think that was a great renting option for me.
And for a vocab lesson, can you describe to us, what do you mean by these A or B neighborhoods?
So again, like Nelson talks about this in his cram classes, but basically Nelson's reasoning behind it is that in a situation where like the economy goes to shit, people in class A neighborhoods will downgrade to class B and C homes. Just because that's what they can afford. And so I guess I think of D as being like the hood, right? And I think of A being like where everyone wants to be that makes like a decent income and where like all the best schools are. So everything else sort of falls into that, falls in between that. If you're not in the ghetto or if you're not in like super nice neighborhoods, then you're sort of like C or B. And I think one of the things that they talk about is B would be like hipster, up and coming, has nice coffee shops and like Trader Joe's and stuff like that. And then C would just be like a step under B. And so I know it like doesn't make any sense. When I heard people talking about A, B, C, D, I'm thinking like, gosh, what the hell are they talking about? And like, who rates this anyways, right? But I think that once you start like buying, once you start analyzing deals, it kind of starts to make more sense, especially when you look at the schools. So I have kids, obviously, and looking at like the neighborhoods of the school was kind of how I was determining like, is this a C or a B? If the schools were like 5 and up, then it was like I considered that like a B. If it was below 5, for me that's like a C, as long as it wasn't like a 1.
Yeah, I think David Green was the one who mentioned this, but he rates his neighborhoods off of coffee. If you have craft coffee houses, A class. If you have Starbucks, that's B class. If you have McDonald's, that's C class. And then if there's no coffee places, then you're in a rough spot, because those people probably don't need to wake up in the morning to go to work. So
that's hilarious. Anyways, yeah, I guess that's pretty true. When I think back about at the opportunity, the homes that I was analyzing, that probably makes sense.
Right. And then for members that, well, the reason why we're discussing these type of neighborhoods, we're also looking at what's the return rate when you're purchasing in these neighborhoods. Maybe if you're buying something in the more expensive, in the like A or B neighborhoods, those are going to be more expensive. You might have a lower return. Whereas D's and C's and D's, you might have a high return, but you're going to have a larger risk, or the properties might not be well taken care of, and maybe the neighborhood's not as good or safe. So while you're picking out what's best for you, you're going to have to decide on how much you can afford, how much cash flow you need, and what's your ultimate goal as you're picking these areas and prices out. Let's see, next question is from Erica. You know how we always talk about the 30-day challenge? So when's the next one? And yeah, when are we planning to host the next 30-day challenge? That's a good question. Nelson, when are we? We already finished Chinese New Year. What's the next holiday that we can make up? And
yeah, I don't know when you're gonna have the next big push. We do have like a little mini group of people that's kind of like a mastermind, but we haven't really had an aggressive push as much as we had with the first cohort, since we've been busy doing everything else. So
I think we started all buying, actually.
Yeah, they all started buying pretty much. I think that's what happened. So people got busy. I guess we could try hosting another one, but really the main thing about the 30-day challenge is we're not trying to just take everyone who's interested. We really want people who know their financing situation, first off, and then 2, they have the capital and everything ready. So like that, that pre-approval makes it a lot easier for us to be like, all right, this is less mental computation time for everyone involved. It'd be a lot easier if they A, knew their market by living there for at least a year, and B, had their financing ready. So that's kind of the premise for the 30-day challenge. It wasn't to help somebody start completely from scratch. It was to help somebody who has been interested for a while, but they have a lot of paralysis because they don't know, where they're, or just like smaller things, right? Like what my renovation budget's going to look like, what I'm going to end up, having to, what I'm going to end up having to do to, make sure I don't make any mistakes with my person who's doing the inspection. So I think that's kind of why we're just going to go off a rolling basis. I don't know when the next one will be, but when are you free, Annie? Our thought was maybe we do a big Texas trip for a lot of people at some point, and then just shop everyone around, just to.
Yeah, so a lot of the people in the room, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but Nelson's been having regular meetings up in or meetups over in the Austin area. We should have another one coming up end of April, right? I believe.
It'll be at
Christine's
Christine's
restaurant.
husband. Yeah.
What's the dates and the info?
Yeah. The date is, I believe, let me check the meetup event information. Yeah, thanks everyone who stuck through. The fun meetup is Wednesday, April 28th, and it'll be at a pho restaurant. So that'll be fun. Usually at these meetups, we've been getting like half the people come from California or like out of state. So most of the people at the meetup aren't even in Austin, which is kind of the crazy part.
Right. And so if you guys are thinking about flying out to Austin, you guys can definitely check that out. Christine Chow, she's one of our partners that we work with over in the Austin area. She is a broker. The mortgage is, she can help you also with the mortgages and the lending. So if you're looking for that, go check it out. We'll be eating at a restaurant anyways. So that's something. And so for those who want to join the 30-day challenge, if you already have a pre-approval letter, you already have your money set aside, you have kind of a budget of a very specific type of property in mind in a location, and you just need that extra kick and help, then go ahead and fill out that Google form that we've have in the chat room, and we'll put you in touch with in our Facebook group chat for to get some more mentoring help. We have a small group of those that are lenders, and there's developers, there's Nelson, there's me, I'm just the cheerleader, but we're just helping each other out and encouraging you guys to get through your purchases.
It's really interesting because now we're starting to get in the cycle where people like Susan, who bought 3 months ago, are starting to give advice for the new group of people coming in 3 months later.
Yeah, so Nathaniel asked, when is the Bay Area dim sum meetup? Well, I'm starting to think like if we have enough people that are willing to trek down to South Bay, let's hit up Unji's restaurant over at Rumblefish in Mountain View, because I think that kind of be a cool place to hang out and meet other SARE members and support our local SARE members. So let's see, we can plan something out and maybe potentially another Texas trip in the next couple weeks. That'd be fun. Did we get all the questions? Yeah, I think that's about it.
Questions, yeah. Hold on. I see some more questions on the Facebook Live. We also have like 12 people in there.
Sorry, we ignored those guys on Facebook because they didn't drop into Zoom. Oh, but I do also see one from Sophia. She asked if the 30-day challenge is just for those who are focused on buying locally where they live. No, it's not. It's also open to those who are out-of-state investors as well. So we did have a couple of people who were in San Francisco that bought in Georgia and and in Texas. So we can help you with those, and also Phoenix. Yeah, Rumblefish in Mountain View, great sushi place.
Ideally be somebody though who's done enough research on where they're looking at, such that they have a neighborhood already in mind, or at least like a city, they know for sure. Ideally, it wouldn't have to be somebody who's like, maybe North Carolina, maybe Texas, maybe Florida. It would be a lot nicer if you had like a target area, and that makes it a lot easier to pull the trigger, because there's more than one. There's always ways to make money in real estate. You can either buy huge discounts in neighborhoods and areas that aren't popular, or you can buy somewhere that's exploding in price, right? And if you don't pick one, you don't really have any, like you're not specialized, or you're competing with a lot of other people who are on the ground with more money and knowledge. So it's like, it's a lot easier if you can really narrow down what it is you're looking for us to help you with.
I think those are all the questions. Did we get everyone in the Facebook link? I think we did. Oh.
Yeah, I think that's all of our questions for today. All right, thank you everyone for showing up. Oh, we went slightly over time, but it's still staying an hour. I will see you guys next week at the meetup. You got any closing words, Susan, Annie, anyone?
And probably just to keep reaching out to people in the group. You never know who you're going to come across. So if you're interested in Charlotte, feel free to reach out to me too. I'm still a newbie, but happy to answer any questions that I can.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.